In a single day and night of misfortune, the island of Atlantis disappeared into the depths of the sea. These words, written by the ancient Greek philosopher Plato over 2,400 years ago, launched one of history's greatest mysteries, a mystery that has consumed explorers, scientists, and dreamers for millennia. But here's the question that will blow your mind. What if I told you that Atlantis wasn't just a story? What if somewhere beneath our oceans or buried under centuries of earth and time lies evidence of a civilization so advanced that it could rewrite everything we think we know about human history? Welcome to History Unleashed, where we dive deep into the mysteries that have shaped our world and challenged our understanding of the past. I'm your host, and today we're embarking on an epic journey to uncover the truth behind the most famous lost civilization ever described. From ancient Greek texts to modern underwater archaeology, from geological catastrophes to cutting-edge technology, we'll explore every clue, examine every theory, and ask the ultimate question: is Atlantis real? If you're ready to dive into one of history's most captivating mysteries, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because what we're about to discover might just change how you see the ancient world forever. And trust me, by the end of this investigation, you'll have a completely new perspective on what our ancestors might have achieved thousands of years before the pyramids were even built. So grab your diving gear for the mind. We're going deep. Picture this: Athens, 360 BCE. The greatest philosophical mind of the ancient world sits in his academy, surrounded by eager students hanging on his every word. Plato is about to tell a story that will echo through the corridors of time for over 2 millennia, a tale so vivid and detailed that it will inspire countless expeditions, launch 1,000 theories, and become the template for every lost civilization story that follows. But here's what makes this moment absolutely extraordinary. Plato insists he's not telling a story at all. He claims he's recounting historical fact. In his dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, Plato presents what he calls a most true account of a mighty civilization that existed 9,000 years before his time, making it approximately 11,600 years old from our perspective today. This wasn't some vague myth passed down through generations of storytellers. Plato provides incredibly specific details that read more like a geographic survey than a fairy tale. He describes an island larger than Libya and Asia combined, located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar. Ruled by powerful sea kings who commanded vast fleets and controlled territories across the Mediterranean and beyond. But Plato's account goes far beyond simple geography. He paints a picture of a civilization that achieved heights of sophistication that would make modern urban planners weep with envy. The capital city of Atlantis, according to Plato, was laid out in perfect concentric circles, alternating rings of land and water connected by bridges and tunnels that created a marvel of ancient engineering. The outermost ring was 3 stades wide, about 550 meters. The next was 2 stades, and the innermost was 1 stade, with each ring separated by water channels that were carefully engineered for both transportation and defense. The central island housed a magnificent temple to Poseidon, god of the sea, decorated with gold, silver, and the mysterious metal orichalcum, which Plato describes as being more precious than any substance except gold itself. This temple was a stadium in length, 3 plethra in width, and proportionally high, with barbaric splendor in its appearance. The entire circuit of the wall around the outermost ring they covered with brass, the second with tin, and the third, which surrounded the citadel, with orichalcum that sparkled like fire. The Atlanteans, in Plato's telling, were the children of Poseidon and a mortal woman named Cleito. The god of the sea had fallen in love with this beautiful maiden who lived on the island when it was inhabited only by scattered tribes, and he created the ringed city as a paradise for her and their offspring. The 10 sons born from this divine union became the rulers of Atlantis, with the eldest Atlas, giving his name to both the island and the ocean that surrounded it. Each brother received a portion of the island to rule, but all remained united under Atlas's supreme authority, creating a confederation that combined local autonomy with central coordination. What makes Plato's description so compelling and so controversial is the incredible level of detail he provides about Atlantean society, technology, and culture. This wasn't a primitive Bronze Age civilization struggling with basic agriculture and simple tools. According to Plato, the Atlanteans had mastered hydraulic engineering on a scale that wouldn't be seen again until the Roman Empire. They had created a sophisticated naval technology that allowed them to project power across vast distances. They had developed agricultural techniques so advanced that their island paradise could support a population in the millions while maintaining perfect ecological balance. The island itself was rich in natural resources beyond imagination. There were 2 harvests every year, one in winter fed by rain from heaven, and one in summer irrigated by streams from the earth. The island produced everything needed for human life: timber for construction, metals for tools and weapons, herbs and fruits and flowers in abundance, and animals both wild and domestic, including elephants in great numbers. The soil was so fertile and the climate so perfect that anything planted would grow luxuriantly. The military might of Atlantis, as Plato describes it, was truly staggering. Their navy consisted of 1,200 ships, each capable of carrying 120 warriors, giving them a naval force of over 140,000 men, larger than many modern navies. Their army included 60,000 officers commanding infantry formations, 120,000 heavy infantry, 120,000 archers, 180,000 slingers, 24,000 sailors for additional ships, and an incredible 10,000 chariots. These numbers describe a military machine that could have conquered any known civilization of the ancient world, and according to Plato, that's exactly what they tried to do. The social organization of Atlantis was equally impressive in its sophistication. The kings. The social organization of Atlantis was equally impressive in its sophistication. The kings of the 10 portions met together every 5th and 6th year alternately to consult about common interests and to judge anyone who had violated their laws. Before passing judgment, they performed an elaborate ritual involving the sacrifice of bulls in the temple of Poseidon, mixing the blood with wine and pouring it over a sacred inscription of their laws. They wore azure robes and judged in the darkness of night, extinguishing all fires in the temple so that their decisions would be made without earthly influence, guided only by divine wisdom. Here's where I want to pause and ask you something that gets to the heart of this entire mystery. From which country are you watching this video? Because every culture on Earth has stories about great floods, lost civilizations, and golden ages that ended in catastrophe. The Greeks had Atlantis, the Indians spoke of Lemuria, the Mayans described previous world ages destroyed by cosmic catastrophes, and even modern Aboriginal Australians preserve oral traditions about lands that disappeared beneath the rising seas. What if these aren't just myths? What if they're cultural memories of real events? Drop your country in the comments and let me know what lost civilization stories your culture preserves. I'm fascinated by how similar these tales are across completely different societies. But Plato's Atlantis wasn't just powerful. It was morally complex in ways that make it surprisingly modern in its psychological sophistication. In the beginning, according to his account, the Atlanteans were noble, virtuous, and wise. They used their great power responsibly, governing justly and maintaining the balance between human ambition and natural harmony that had made their civilization possible in the first place. They were, in essence, the perfect society that philosophers had always dreamed about but never seen realized in the messy reality of human politics and social organization. The divine nature that flowed in their veins made them despise everything except virtue, and they were gentle and wise in their mutual relations. They regarded wealth as a burden rather than a blessing, carrying their golden and silver possessions lightly, not intoxicated by luxury or made arrogant by riches. They remained sober and saw clearly that all these material goods increased through virtue and friendship, while excessive zeal for wealth destroyed both the goods themselves and virtue as well. However, Plato understood something about human nature that modern political scientists are still grappling with: that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Over time, he tells us, the divine blood that flowed in Atlantean veins became diluted through intermarriage with mortals. And as their divine nature weakened, their human nature asserted itself with increasingly destructive consequences. The Atlanteans became greedy, aggressive, and arrogant. They began to see their power not as a responsibility to serve justice and maintain harmony, but as a license to dominate and exploit others for their own benefit. The transformation was gradual but inexorable. Where once they had been content with their island paradise and the just governance of their confederation, they began to look outward with envious eyes at the wealth and territories of other peoples. Their naval expeditions, which had originally been peaceful trading ventures that brought prosperity to all involved, gradually became military campaigns of conquest and subjugation. Their advanced technology, which had been used to create earthly paradise, was turned toward the manufacture of weapons and instruments of war. The corruption of Atlantean society wasn't just moral, it was cosmic. According to Plato, Zeus himself, king of the gods and ultimate guardian of justice, looked down upon the once noble civilization and saw that it had become a cancer that threatened the entire world. The Atlanteans were no longer content to rule their vast island paradise. They wanted to conquer everything, to subjugate all other peoples and impose their will upon the entire known world. They had become the very thing that their original virtue had been designed to prevent: a tyrannical empire that used superior power to crush freedom and justice wherever they found it. The war between Atlantis and the ancient Athens of 9,600 BCE, as Plato describes it, was nothing less than a cosmic struggle between the forces of tyranny and freedom, between the corruption of unlimited power and the virtue of principled resistance. According to his account, prehistoric Athens, a city that existed thousands of years before the Athens of Plato's own time, stood virtually alone against the Atlantean war machine, yet somehow managed to defeat this seemingly invincible enemy through superior virtue, better organization, and the favor of the gods who supported justice. The war between Atlantis and the ancient Athens of 9,600 BCE, as Plato describes it, was nothing less than a cosmic struggle between the forces of tyranny and freedom, between the corruption of unlimited power and the virtue of principled resistance. According to his account, prehistoric Athens, a city that existed thousands of years before the Athens of Plato's own time, stood virtually alone against the Atlantean war machine, yet somehow managed to defeat this seemingly invincible enemy through superior virtue, better organization, and the favor of the gods who supported justice over mere might. The prehistoric Athenians, according to Plato's account, represented everything that the corrupted Atlanteans had abandoned. They lived simply but nobly, organized their society around principles of justice and equality, and valued wisdom and virtue above material wealth or military conquest. When the Atlantean fleets appeared on the horizon carrying the largest military force the world had ever seen, The ancient Athenians didn't flee or submit. They chose to fight for the principles they believed in, even against impossible odds. The details of this ancient war are frustratingly sparse in Plato's account, but he suggests that the Athenians' victory came not through superior numbers or technology, but through better leadership, higher morale, and the kind of tactical brilliance that emerges when people fight for something greater than themselves. The prehistoric Athens that defeated Atlantis was portrayed as the ideal warrior society, disciplined, courageous, and unified by shared commitment to justice and freedom. But victory came at a terrible price that would haunt both civilizations. In a single catastrophic day and night, earthquakes and floods of unprecedented violence struck both the Atlantean Empire and their Athenian enemies. The Atlantean forces that had invaded the Mediterranean were swallowed by the earth, while Atlantis itself disappeared beneath the waves, leaving behind only unnavigable muddy shallows where a mighty civilization had once stood. Even victorious Athens suffered devastating losses, with all their warriors perishing in the same catastrophe that destroyed their enemies, leaving only scattered survivors to preserve the memory of both the great victory and the terrible cost at which it had been won. The physical destruction of Atlantis, according to Plato, was so complete that it left no trace except the dangerous shallows that made navigation impossible in the area where the island had once stood. This detail has proven particularly frustrating for modern researchers because if Plato's account is accurate, any evidence of Atlantean civilization would now lie beneath thousands of feet of ocean water, scattered across a sea floor that has been disturbed by nearly 12 millennia of geological activity, making archaeological verification virtually impossible with current technology. Yet perhaps the most intriguing aspect of Plato's account is not what he tells us about Atlantis, but why he tells us anything at all. Unlike other ancient myths and legends that were passed down through oral tradition and gradually embellished over centuries of retelling, Plato's Atlantis appears fully formed in his philosophical dialogues, complete with specific dates, detailed geography, and precise measurements that read more like historical documentation than mythological speculation. He claims to have received this account through a chain of transmission that included the famous Athenian lawgiver Solon, who supposedly learned the story during his travels in Egypt from priests who had preserved it in their temple records for thousands of years. According to Plato, Solon had intended to write an epic poem about Atlantis, but died before completing the work, leaving only notes that were eventually passed down through his family and friends until they reached Plato through his great-grandfather Dropides, who had been a friend and relative of Solon. This claim of Egyptian origin is particularly significant because it places the source of the Atlantis story in a civilization that was already ancient in Plato's time, with written records stretching back thousands of years, and a priestly class dedicated to preserving historical knowledge with remarkable accuracy. The Egyptian priests, according to Plato's account, told Solon that their records went back 8,000 years before his visit, making them repositories of information about events and civilizations that had been completely forgotten by other cultures. The Egyptian connection also provides a potential explanation for how accurate information about prehistoric events could have been preserved across such vast spans of time. Unlike the oral traditions of most ancient cultures, which were subject to gradual change and embellishment over generations, the Egyptian temple records were maintained by professional scribes and priests whose religious duties, the hunt for Atlantis, has consumed some of history's greatest minds, from Renaissance scholars poring over ancient texts by candlelight to modern underwater archaeologists using cutting-edge sonar technology to map ocean floors that have never seen sunlight. What makes this quest so compelling and so frustrating is that unlike purely mythological places like Mount Olympus or the Garden of Eden, Plato's Atlantis comes with specific geographic coordinates, precise measurements and detailed descriptions that seem designed to help someone actually find it. It's as if Plato left us a treasure map, but wrote it in a code that we're still trying to crack 2,400 years later. The first challenge any Atlantis detective faces is Plato himself. The man who gave us this tantalizing mystery was not a historian or geographer, but a philosopher whose primary concern was exploring questions about justice, virtue, and the ideal organization of human society. Everything Plato wrote was designed to serve philosophical purposes, which immediately raises the fundamental question, is Atlantis a historical account that he's using to make philosophical points? Or is it a philosophical allegory that he's disguised as historical account? The answer to this question determines whether we should be looking for a real lost civilization or appreciating a brilliant piece of ancient science fiction. Plato's student Aristotle clearly believed his teacher had invented Atlantis as a literary device, famously commenting that he who created Atlantis also destroyed it. This dismissive attitude dominated scholarly opinion for centuries, with most academics treating Atlantis as an obvious fiction that only the gullible would take seriously. The philosophical establishment viewed any serious search for Atlantis as a waste of time, arguing that Plato's primary purpose was to illustrate abstract principles about political organization and moral development, rather than to preserve historical information about real ancient civilizations. But this conventional wisdom began to crack in the 19th and 20th centuries as archaeologists made discoveries that seemed to validate other ancient accounts that had previously been dismissed as pure mythology. The transformation of scholarly attitudes toward ancient texts represents one of the most dramatic shifts in academic thinking over the past 2 centuries, as repeated archaeological discoveries have forced researchers to take seriously historical claims that previous generations had rejected as impossible or implausible. The discovery of Troy by Heinrich Schliemann in the 1870s revolutionized how scholars approached ancient texts and fundamentally changed the relationship between classical literature and historical research. For centuries, Homer's Iliad had been treated as pure literature, a poetic fantasy with no connection to historical reality. Scholars assumed that the Trojan War was a mythological invention created to explore timeless themes about heroism, honor, and the tragic consequences of human pride and passion. The idea that archaeologists could actually locate the physical remains of Priam's city was considered absurd by serious academics. But Schliemann's excavations proved that Troy was real, that the Trojan War had probably happened, and that ancient authors sometimes preserved accurate historical information, even when they were primarily concerned with entertainment or moral instruction. The discovery sent shockwaves through the academic world and forced scholars to reconsider fundamental assumptions about the reliability of ancient sources. Suddenly, the fact that Plato was a philosopher rather than a historian didn't automatically disqualify his account from containing genuine historical information. The Minoan civilization discovery in the early 20th century provided even more dramatic validation of ancient sources and demonstrated that sophisticated prehistoric civilizations had indeed existed in the Mediterranean region during periods that classical authors had described. Sir Arthur Evans's excavations at Knossos revealed a sophisticated Bronze Age civilization on Crete that had been completely forgotten by classical Greek and Roman authors, yet clearly influenced later Greek culture in profound ways that could be traced through art, architecture, religious symbolism, and cultural practices. The Minoans had multi-story palaces with indoor plumbing that wouldn't be matched in Europe for over 1,000 years. Advanced agricultural techniques that supported large urban populations, extensive trade networks that connected them with civilizations across the Mediterranean and beyond, and artistic achievements that demonstrated sophisticated aesthetic sensibilities and technical skills. Most intriguingly, their civilization seemed to have ended suddenly around 1450 BCE in circumstances that might have involved natural disasters, warfare, or internal collapse. Precisely the kind of... The Minoans had multi-story palaces with indoor plumbing that wouldn't be matched in Europe for over 1,000 years. Advanced agricultural techniques that supported large urban populations, extensive trade networks that connected them with civilizations across the Mediterranean and beyond, and artistic achievements that demonstrated sophisticated aesthetic sensibilities and technical skills. Most intriguingly, their civilization seemed to have ended suddenly around 1450 BCE in circumstances that might have involved natural disasters, warfare, or internal collapse. Precisely the kind of dramatic ending that characterized lost civilizations in ancient accounts. These archaeological revelations force scholars to reconsider the possibility that Plato's Atlantis might be based on folk memories of real civilizations that had been lost to historical record but preserved in oral traditions that eventually reached him through Egyptian sources. The question was no longer whether ancient authors could preserve accurate information about lost civilizations, but whether Plato's specific account contained enough verifiable details to guide modern archaeological investigation and distinguish authentic historical information from philosophical speculation or literary embellishment. The search for these details has produced some of the most creative detective work in the history of archaeology and historical research. Scholars have analyzed every aspect of Plato's description with forensic precision. The geography, the technology, the social organization, the military capabilities, the cultural practices, and especially the catastrophic ending. Looking for clues that might point toward real places, real events, and real civilizations that could have inspired his account. This analytical approach has revealed both the remarkable consistency of Plato's account and the significant challenges involved in translating his ancient Greek descriptions into modern geographic and archaeological terms. The geographic clues seem the most promising at first glance, offering concrete details that should be verifiable through modern surveying and exploration techniques. Plato places Atlantis beyond the Pillars of Hercules, which clearly refers to the Strait of Gibraltar, in an area of the Atlantic Ocean that was supposedly rendered unnavigable by the muddy shallows left behind when the island sank. He describes it as larger than Libya and Asia combined, which in ancient Greek geographic terms would make it roughly the size of modern Turkey or Texas. A substantial landmass that should leave considerable archaeological evidence if it really existed and was destroyed within the time frame of human civilization. But here's where the detective work gets complicated and frustrating. Plato's description of Atlantis's size and location, if taken literally, places it in a part of the Atlantic Ocean where modern oceanographic surveys have found no evidence of any large landmass that could have existed above sea level within the past 100,000 years, let alone the 11,600 years since its supposed destruction. The Mid-Atlantic Ridge, which some early researchers proposed as a possible location for Atlantis, has been underwater for millions of years and shows no signs of recent catastrophic subsidence that could account for the sudden disappearance that Plato describes. This geographic impossibility has led researchers in two directions. Some conclude Plato's account must be fictional. Others suggest either Plato made errors or his sources had garbled information about real events in different locations or times. Here's something fascinating. Every part of the world has produced researchers convinced that Atlantis was located in their region. From which country are you watching? Because I'd bet there's someone from your region who has argued Atlantis was located near you. What do you think this tells us about human nature and our relationship with mystery? The technological details in Plato's account seem remarkably advanced for 11,000 years ago, during the Mesolithic period when most humans were hunter-gatherers. However, Recent discoveries like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, with massive stone temples dating to 9,500 BCE, prove complex monumental architecture was possible thousands of years earlier than imagined. The search has been revolutionized by underwater archaeology and geological surveying. Sonar mapping and underwater robotics have revealed a complex ocean floor with evidence of dramatic changes, submerged landmasses, and underwater features that could hide lost civilizations. Particularly promising research focuses on areas above sea level during the Ice Age, but now underwater. These submerged continental shelves have yielded evidence of human habitation, proving significant archaeological sites lie beneath oceans in areas once accessible to prehistoric peoples. Black Sea research has been revealing with evidence suggesting it was once a smaller freshwater lake catastrophically flooded around 5,600 BCE when rising Mediterranean waters breached the Bosporus. This flood would have drowned thousands of square miles in weeks, potentially creating the sudden catastrophe that inspired flood myths. Whether Atlantis was real or imaginary, the search has revealed that our ancestors were far more sophisticated than previously believed. And civilizational rise and fall is more complex than neat historical timelines suggest. Modern science has transformed the Atlantis search from romantic quest into rigorous investigation using geology, oceanography, archaeology, and satellite imaging to piece together clues about our planet's mysterious past. Satellite imagery has democratized the search, allowing citizen scientists worldwide to scan for unusual formations. Google Earth has generated hundreds of claimed discoveries, from geometric patterns near the Canary Islands to rectangular structures in the Sahara that might be buried ancient cities. Dr. Richard Freund's team used ground-penetrating radar and satellite imagery to investigate what they believe might be Atlantis in southern Spain's marshlands. They've identified buried structures in Doñana National Park showing concentric circles matching Plato's description, located where a large bay would have existed in ancient times. The geological evidence for catastrophic events around 11,600 years ago, exactly when Plato says Atlantis was destroyed, has become compelling. Greenland ice core samples show massive climate disruption during this period, known as the Younger Dryas event, with global temperatures plummeting 10 degrees Celsius in decades. The Younger Dryas has been linked to potential causes that could account for Plato's sudden catastrophe. Some scientists propose a massive asteroid impact in the North Atlantic triggered climate change, while generating tsunamis large enough to destroy coastal civilizations. Others suggest rapid draining of glacial lakes disrupted ocean currents and triggered sudden sea level changes. Mediterranean research reveals the region was subject to massive geological instability during this period. Discovery of mega-tsunami evidence in the eastern Mediterranean shows the kind of sudden catastrophic flooding Plato describes not only was possible but actually occurred multiple times. Here's something that blows my mind. We now know prehistoric humans were creating sophisticated structures thousands of years before we thought possible. From which country are you watching? Because your region probably has archaeological sites redated to much earlier periods, showing ancient peoples were more advanced than we gave them credit for. Underwater archaeology has revealed significant portions of coastlines above sea level during the Ice Age are now submerged under hundreds of feet of water. These drowned landscapes represent vast areas where sophisticated prehistoric civilizations could have developed and been lost when sea levels rose. Climatological research has provided crucial context, revealing Earth's climate system is far more unstable than believed, with sudden shifts that could transform regions from habitable to uninhabitable in generations. These findings support the possibility that maritime civilizations could have been destroyed by rapid climate change combined with geological catastrophes. Modern oceanographic research has revolutionized understanding of how the ocean floor changes over time. Deep-sea exploration reveals the ocean floor is far more dynamic than believed, with massive underwater landslides, volcanic activity, and sediment movement that could easily bury evidence of surface civilizations on now submerged land. The application of rigorous scientific methodology has helped separate genuine evidence from speculation. While debunking many claimed discoveries, it has also identified legitimate mysteries deserving further investigation, ensuring the search contributes to genuine advances in understanding ancient history. The quest for Atlantis has led to remarkable revolutions in understanding ancient history. Discovering sophisticated civilizations existed thousands of years before thought possible, capable of achievements rivaling our own, many disappearing so completely they were forgotten until modern archaeology excavated them. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey stands as perhaps the most shocking revelation about prehistoric capabilities. Dating to 9,500 BCE, when Plato says Atlantis existed, this massive complex of stone circles with intricately carved pillars represents the world's oldest known monumental architecture, predating Stonehenge by 6,000 years and the Great Pyramid by 7,000 years. What makes Göbekli Tepe extraordinary is it was apparently built by hunter-gatherers before agriculture, pottery, or metalworking, challenging fundamental assumptions about civilization development. The site required coordination of hundreds of workers over generations, sophisticated planning, and artistic capabilities producing some of the ancient world's finest stone sculpture. The underwater city of Dwarka off India's coast provides another stunning example of unknown ancient civilizations. Marine archaeologists discovered substantial city remains submerged in the Gulf of Cambay, with structures appearing over 9,000 years old according to carbon dating, potentially predating Sumerian cities by several thousand years. Black Sea research by Robert Ballard has revealed evidence of human habitation on what is now the seafloor, providing concrete proof that rising sea levels actually did drown inhabited areas and potentially destroy prehistoric civilization evidence. Discovery of ancient shorelines, river valleys, and preserved wooden structures shows this water body was much smaller during prehistoric times and catastrophically flooded around 5,600 BCE. The discovery of sophisticated megalithic structures across Europe reveals prehistoric peoples were capable of astronomical observations and mathematical calculations, demonstrating remarkable intellectual achievements. Sites like Newgrange in Ireland, predating Stonehenge and aligning precisely with winter solstice sunrise, show ancient peoples possessed sophisticated celestial mechanics knowledge. Here's what amazes me about these discoveries. Every few years, archaeologists uncover evidence pushing back dates for human achievements further, showing ancestors accomplishing incredible things when we thought they lived in primitive simplicity. From which country are you watching? What's the most surprising archaeological discovery made in your area? Drop it in the comments. The Antikythera mechanism, an ancient Greek astronomical computer from 100 BCE, demonstrated ancient civilizations possessed technological capabilities completely unknown to modern scholars until discovered. This bronze mechanism could predict sun, moon, and planet positions with remarkable accuracy, representing mechanical sophistication unmatched in Europe for over 1,000 years. Study of ancient metallurgy reveals prehistoric peoples created alloys and metalworking techniques demonstrating remarkable technological sophistication. The Nebra Sky Disk in Germany shows Bronze Age Europeans possessed advanced astronomical knowledge and metallurgical skills, creating complex bronze objects with gold inlays requiring precise temperature control. Investigation of ancient navigation reveals prehistoric peoples undertook ocean voyages and established trade networks across vast distances thousands of years before such capabilities were thought possible. Polynesian Pacific settlement accomplished using sophisticated star navigation demonstrates ancient mariners possessed knowledge, allowing them to cross thousands of miles with remarkable accuracy. These discoveries have profound implications for evaluating Plato's Atlantis account. If prehistoric peoples were capable of documented achievements worldwide, then technological and cultural sophistication attributed to Atlantean civilization becomes far more plausible than when scholars believed advanced civilizations only began around 3000 BCE. The pattern of civilizational collapse and recovery documented at numerous sites also supports plausibility of sudden catastrophic endings like Plato describes. The Bronze Age collapse around 1200 BCE saw sudden disappearance of numerous sophisticated Mediterranean civilizations, while Maya collapse around 900 CE demonstrates even highly advanced societies can disappear rapidly when faced with environmental challenges. Most significantly, discovery of sophisticated prehistoric civilizations completely unknown to historical records, until modern archaeology suggests other advanced ancient civilizations could have existed and disappeared without leaving historical traces. If the Indus Valley civilization could exist for over 1,000 years, then vanish so completely it wasn't rediscovered until the 20th century. Other equally, most significantly, discovery of sophisticated prehistoric civilizations completely unknown to historical records until modern archaeology suggests other advanced ancient civilizations could have existed and disappeared without leaving historical traces. If the Indus Valley civilization could exist for over 1,000 years, then vanish so completely it wasn't rediscovered until the 20th century, other equally sophisticated civilizations could have existed and been destroyed so thoroughly they survive only in fragmentary legends like Plato's Atlantis. The most compelling aspect of Plato's account may not be his perfect civilization description, but his claim it was destroyed in a single catastrophic day and night by unprecedented earthquakes and floods. Modern science reveals our planet is far more geologically active and environmentally unstable than previously realized, with evidence of sudden catastrophic events that could account for rapid civilization destruction and complete archaeological trace erasure. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis represents one of the most dramatic scientific theories explaining the kind of sudden global catastrophe Plato describes. This theory, supported by growing geological evidence, suggests a massive cosmic impact around 12,900 years ago, triggered the Younger Dryas climate event. Sudden return to Ice Age conditions lasting over 1,000 years and fundamentally altering planetary environment. Evidence for this impact includes discovery of sediment layers found across North America, Europe, and Asia containing high concentrations of rare metals typically associated with cosmic impacts, along with microscopic diamonds and carbon spherules forming under extreme temperatures and pressures generated by asteroid or comet impacts. This layer dates precisely to the Younger Dryas period beginning. Environmental consequences of such an impact would have been catastrophic for existing human civilizations. Initial impact would have generated massive tsunamis, triggered widespread volcanic activity, and caused immediate climate disruption. Longer-term effects would include dramatic temperature drops, altered precipitation patterns, and ecological collapse that could destroy environmental foundations supporting advanced civilizations. Dr. Richard Firestone and colleagues have documented this impact event evidence in sediment cores, ice cores, and archaeological sites across multiple continents, building a case that cosmic catastrophe occurred precisely when Plato says Atlantis was destroyed, The timing correlation between proposed impact event and Plato's date is particularly striking. Volcanic activity represents another mechanism accounting for rapid catastrophic destruction Plato describes. The Lacher Sea eruption in Germany around 12,900 years ago was large enough to affect European climate, demonstrating massive volcanic events occurred during the same period when Atlantis was supposedly destroyed. Here's something that puts ancient catastrophes in perspective. Our planet has experienced numerous events that would completely destroy modern civilization if they occurred today. Many during the period when Plato says Atlantis existed. From which country are you watching? Your region has almost certainly experienced major geological catastrophes during human history that could have wiped out entire civilizations. What's the most significant natural disaster in your region's geological history? Study of sea level changes at the Ice Age's end reveals coastal areas worldwide experienced dramatic and sometimes rapid inundation as glacial ice melted. Meltwater Pulse 1. Around 14,600 years ago saw global sea levels rise 16 to 24 meters in less than 500 years. Catastrophic for any maritime civilizations developed on coastal plains during the Ice Age. More dramatically, Meltwater Pulse 1b around 11,400 years ago, very close to Plato's Atlantis destruction date, involved another rapid sea level rise that would have drowned vast previously inhabited coastline areas. These rapid changes were often accompanied by catastrophic flooding as glacial lakes burst ice dams and released enormous water volumes into ocean systems. The accumulating evidence for multiple catastrophic event types during the period when Atlantis supposedly existed suggests Plato's sudden destruction account may be the most historically accurate aspect of his entire narrative. Whether or not a civilization matching his description actually existed, geological and climate data confirm the late Pleistocene and early Holocene periods were characterized by environmental instability and catastrophic events that could easily have destroyed advanced human civilizations and erased most existence traces from archaeological records. In the 21st century, the Atlantis search has been revolutionized by technologies that would have seemed magical to previous researchers. Satellite imagery, sonar systems, ground-penetrating radar, and underwater robots have contributed to a new research phase combining rigorous scientific methodology with adventurous spirit. Google Earth has democratized the search, allowing citizen scientists worldwide to scan satellite imagery for unusual formations representing lost civilization evidence. The platform has generated hundreds of claimed discoveries, though most turn out to be natural geological formations or misinterpreted modern artifacts. Robert Ballard's work has brought serious scientific credibility to underwater archaeological research. His Black Sea exploration provided concrete evidence that human settlements from prehistoric periods now lie beneath hundreds of feet of water, proving rising sea levels actually did drown inhabited areas and potentially destroy ancient civilization evidence. The investigation of underwater formations near Bimini in the Bahamas has generated decades of controversy about whether geometric stone patterns represent prehistoric human construction or natural geological processes. The Bimini Road consists of limestone blocks arranged in apparent deliberate patterns, though controversy illustrates challenges in interpreting underwater archaeological sites. Here's what fascinates me about the modern search. We now have technology that can literally see through earth and ocean to detect hidden structures. Yet the mystery remains compelling because each discovery raises as many questions as it answers. From which country are you watching? What's the most interesting technological approach to archaeology you've heard about from your area? Development of autonomous underwater vehicles has made detailed surveys of previously inaccessible ocean areas possible. These robotic systems can operate at thousands of meters depth for weeks, collecting high-resolution imagery and bathymetric data revealing subtle ocean floor features that might indicate human construction. Application of artificial intelligence to satellite imagery and sonar data analysis has accelerated discovery pace by automating identification of potentially interesting formations. AI systems can process vast imaging data amounts faster than human researchers and can be trained to recognize patterns indicating human construction. The emerging environmental DNA analysis field provides new tools for understanding ancient ecosystems and human activities, undetectable through conventional archaeology. By analyzing genetic material preserved in sediment cores, researchers can identify species that lived in specific areas during different periods and potentially detect human activity evidence. The modern hunt continues evolving as new technologies become available and new theoretical frameworks develop for understanding how advanced civilizations might develop and disappear without leaving obvious archaeological traces. While definitive Atlantis proof remains elusive, the search has contributed to genuine advances in understanding prehistoric human capabilities. Ancient environmental conditions and complex processes governing civilization rise and fall throughout human history. After decades of scientific investigation, underwater exploration, and archaeological discovery, what can we conclude about Atlantis reality? The answer is more complex than simple yes or no because the search has revealed truths about human history almost as extraordinary as the legend itself. Evidence against literal interpretation of Plato's account is substantial. No archaeological evidence has been found for a civilization matching his description in the location he specifies. Modern oceanographic surveys have mapped the Atlantic Ocean floor in considerable detail, and no large landmass exists where Plato locates Atlantis. The technological capabilities he attributes seem impossible for any prehistoric culture given what we know about human development 11,600 years ago. Furthermore, Plato's account contains internal inconsistencies suggesting philosophical allegory rather than historical documentation. The perfect geometric layout, divine genealogy, and moral narrative all reflect themes central to Plato's philosophical writings rather than messy complexity characterizing real historical societies. However, evidence that sophisticated prehistoric civilizations existed and were destroyed by natural catastrophes has grown substantially stronger. Göbekli Tepe discovery, underwater ruins found globally, and mounting evidence for catastrophic events during the late Pleistocene all support the possibility that advanced human societies existed much earlier than traditional chronologies suggest. The geological evidence for catastrophic events around 11,600 years ago, exactly when Plato says Atlantis was destroyed, is particularly compelling. The Younger Dryas climate event, evidence for possible cosmic impacts, massive flooding from melting ice sheets and widespread geological instability, confirm the kind of sudden global catastrophe Plato describes was not only possible but actually occurred during precisely the time frame he specifies. Most significantly, discovery of sophisticated prehistoric civilizations completely unknown to historical records. Until modern archaeology demonstrates that advanced societies can indeed disappear so thoroughly, they leave no historical trace. The Indus Valley civilization, flourishing for over 1,000 years with cities having tens of thousands of inhabitants, was entirely forgotten until British archaeologists rediscovered it in the 1920s. Here's what I think is most remarkable about the Atlantis mystery. Regardless of whether Plato's civilization actually existed, the search has revealed that our ancestors were far more sophisticated and our planet's history far more dramatic than anyone imagined when serious research began. From which country are you watching? What do you think the search for lost civilizations tells us about human nature and our relationship with our past? The most honest assessment might be that while Plato's specific account is probably fictional or heavily embellished, it may preserve cultural memories of real prehistoric civilizations destroyed by very real catastrophic events during the period he describes. The detailed descriptions could represent Plato's imaginative reconstruction based on fragmentary information about real events preserved in Egyptian records or oral traditions. This interpretation would explain both the remarkable accuracy of Plato's timing for global catastrophic events and the lack of specific archaeological evidence for his particular Atlantean civilization version. It would also account for similarity between Atlantis legends and flood myths found worldwide, suggesting these stories preserve collective human memories of real environmental catastrophes affecting prehistoric societies globally. The possibility that some Atlantis version really existed becomes more plausible considering that the vast majority of Earth's surface that could have harbored prehistoric civilizations remains archaeologically unexplored. The ocean covers over 70% of the planet's surface, and only a tiny seafloor fraction has been examined for archaeological evidence. Whether Atlantis was real or imaginary, the legend continues inspiring exploration, discovery, and speculation about human civilization possibilities and limitations. The search ultimately represents something deeper than archaeological investigation. It embodies humanity's eternal quest to understand our origins, potential, and place in the vast sweep of geological and cosmic time. As we surface from our deep dive into history's greatest mystery, we find ourselves with more questions than answers. But what incredible questions they are. The search for Atlantis has taken us on a journey through cutting-edge science, revolutionary archaeological discoveries, and evidence of catastrophic events that reshaped our planet precisely when Plato said this legendary civilization vanished beneath the waves. Whether Atlantis was a real advanced civilization lost to cataclysmic destruction or the product of Plato's brilliant philosophical imagination, one thing is certain: the quest to find it has revealed that our ancient ancestors were capable of achievements we're only beginning to understand. From the massive stone circles of Göbekli Tepe to the sophisticated astronomical computers of ancient Greece, from underwater cities drowned by rising seas to evidence of cosmic impacts that changed the course of human history, we've discovered that the real story of our past is far more extraordinary than any legend. The mystery of Atlantis reminds us that there are still incredible secrets hidden beneath our oceans, buried under centuries of sediment and waiting to be discovered by the next generation of explorers armed with technologies we can barely imagine today. Every deep-sea expedition, every satellite survey, every archaeological dig brings us closer to understanding the full scope of human achievement and the dramatic forces that have shaped our planet's history. If you've enjoyed this journey into one of history's most enduring mysteries, make sure you're subscribed to History Unleashed and hit that notification bell, because we're just getting started exploring the incredible secrets of our past. From lost civilizations to ancient technologies, from mysterious artifacts to unexplained phenomena, there's a whole world of historical mysteries waiting to be investigated. What do you think? Is Atlantis out there waiting to be discovered? Or is the search itself more valuable than any treasure we might find? Let me know in the comments below. And while you're there, tell me what historical mystery you'd like us to investigate next. Until our next adventure into the unknown, keep questioning, keep exploring, and remember, the greatest discoveries are often hidden in the places we least expect to find them. This is History Unleashed, and the truth is out there waiting to be uncovered.